Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, Dowelling Jigs. Are they created equal? Now, quite some time ago on the show, I brought you guys the Task Dowelling Jig, and that is the jig that I use for doweling joints in my shop. And guys, I keep getting comments underneath that show of that thing is so expensive. I got one just like it off of Amazon. It's just the same thing. It's identical. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. So I got to thinking, you know what? Let's look on Amazon. Let's get the one that is closest to this jig as far as functionality goes. Let's buy it and let's put the two jigs head to head and stop all the nonsense. It's either just as good or it's not. So let's head over to the bench and get this test started. Well, we're going to start off by looking at the Task and its features. Now, the Task is one handle operation. It is a centering jig with a maximum capacity of 2 inch. It comes with 2 each of the drilling bushings, 1/4 inch, 3/8, and the 5/16. And then on the right side of the jig, it has unthreaded holes. The holes on the left are threaded to accept these bushings. The holes on the right are not threaded, and that is to accept a 7/16 drill bit for your dowel, and this one is to accept a 1/2 inch. So all in all, that is basically what you get. What you see is what you get. Now, this generic one right here, same deal. They look identical. If you hold them up side by side, they even have the exact same profiles. But once again, it comes with 2 each of the 1/4 inch, 3/8, and 5/16 bushings, which fit into the left-hand side here in the threaded holes. And then it has the unthreaded holes for the 7/16 and the 1/2 inch, and as well, one hand operation with self-centering. So let's look at the first thing, which is the size, the physical size of these two units. Guys, they are, for all intents and purpose, they are identical. There is no difference in these two units as far as their shape goes, as far as their physical size goes. If it wasn't for the fact that this one's orange, you might actually think that they are in fact the same jig. Guys, they're pretty much identical as far as their physical looks and their supposed physical limitations. Let's have a look at the fit and finish, guys. If we look here on the Task, this here is very well milled. It is very smooth. The bottom is very smooth. There are no sharp edges anywhere here on the aluminum. Even the cut corners, these cut edges here, they're crisp edges, but they're not sharp edges. They've still been kind of filed down a little bit. It's very well milled. The whole thing is solid and it's well milled. If we look at the generic one, and I don't know how well this is going to show on camera, but this is very rough. The whole edge here is very rough. The edge of the aluminum is rough along these milled edges. The chipping here, I don't know if we can see this right here. We've got some serious chipping and gouging along the milling of this jig. The corners are very sharp. Almost to the point where you might even cut yourself on them should you run your fingers too aggressively across them. Now, the parts, they're a little loose on the traveling rods. Now, that doesn't really mean that the jig won't work properly, but there's hardly any play at all here in the Task jig. So right off the bat, we've got a fit issue here. It's all about quality of materials, guys. Now, let's have a look at, say, our 1/4 inch bushing. Now, these ones are for the Task, so they sit in just like this, and Very, very smooth, very easily threads in, and right there, threads right to the bottom. Okay, let's try the other one. So right here, very smooth operation, very smooth threads. Now guys, I already know this stuff because I use this jig all the time. But again, they both bottom out perfectly, very smooth in the operation. The operation here of this center tightening knob is very smooth. There is no play whatsoever. So how about now on the generic? Well, there's no play in this knob. None whatsoever, I'll give you that. But I don't know if you can hear it. Can you hear that? It's almost grinding. It's not a smooth thread. Let me do that, the same thing with the task. Do you hear anything? You don't hear any grinding, but listen to the grinding on this one. It's not exactly properly threaded. It's not a good fit. And due to that, it's not a smooth operation. But that's okay. Let's try the bushing. And we'll go like for like, just to be sure. So I didn't point out the finish on one of these bushings for the task. So I guess I should do that just to be fair. Black finish, the generic or silver, that's okay. But all of the edges smooth. The bottoms here are nicely rounded over. No sharp edges. The bushing looks good. There's no physical defects. The threads look good. There's no physical defects in the threads. Okay, so let's have a look at the no-name one. Well, right off the bat, I can see here that the finish on these bushings is absolutely horrible. It's, I don't know even how to describe it. It's marred. It's not smooth. It's not well done. It's got milling lines in it. The threads have partial defects, it looks like. And the edges are burred. There is a physical burr there that my fingernail actually hooks on. There's a physical burr there on these bushings. I bet you I could use it like a scraper and peel off a piece of, or a bit of wood, but that's physical. That's what you see. That doesn't matter. How does it fit in the bushing? So just like the task would fit it in. I don't know. Seems pretty smooth. Oh, wait. Well, we're not flush there. It got part way down and then the threads kind of caught. So we're not flush on that bushing. Let's try this second one. Oh, okay, right there we're grabbing. Yeah, right there we're grabbing. You can hear it. It's almost like it's cutting its own threads as it goes down through because they're not smooth. Now that one bottomed out, even though it was much more difficult to get in there. This one bottomed out. This one still isn't bottomed out. So is that the bushing or is it this center milled piece? Let's switch them and see what happens. So we'll take this bushing here, the one that's harder to get in and out apparently. And we'll put it in the second hole here, the one that would not bottom out. Okay, it goes fairly smoothly into that hole. No, but it doesn't bottom out. So now we've got a milling issue in this first hole. They don't want to bottom out. This one here just stops. Oh, wait. Okay, we can force it. Guys, you shouldn't have to force a tool like that to get it to function correctly. That should have just popped right into place right off the bat. I shouldn't have to clean the threads using the milling of the tool itself in order to get it to work. We've already determined that although these look very similar, almost identical in appearances as far as the fit the finish, and the functionality of the jig itself, not to mention the functionality of the bushings that go into each one of these jigs. We've already determined that there is a large difference between the quality level of the Task and the quality level of this unit. So what about their function? How they actually work for centering and drilling on a piece of stock? Well, I have the Task jig clamped onto a piece of 5/8 inch thick stock. I have a center line drawn right down the middle, and I am using the 1/4 inch bushings. They're the same ones we had the issues with on the other unit. So I'm going to drill a hole here through just one of the bushings because I want to see how well it centers it. And if we look here, we can see that it is perfectly centered. All right, so I want to try the exact same thing with this no-name brand. Okay, right off the bat, guys, I'm getting shards of metal off of this jig because it's milled really small. There are pieces of steel that my bit is chunking off of there. I know it's not showing on the camera, but in other words, that's not a true 1/4 inch. That seems a little tight. And if we look at it here, guys, this is the Task hole, dead center on that center mark. Look at the generic. That is not centered. That is way off. I don't know by how much, but that is enough that if your boards got flipped around and reversed, they would never ever align. You would never be able to align a board unless you had it in the exact same orientation and you drilled it in the exact same orientation. Not to mention the metal filings that are around here from the bushing as I was drilling it. So, you know what? Let's look a little further into this and see exactly what's going on. Guys, what you see here is exactly the way that I received this jig out of the package. I have never adjusted it. I have never had to change anything. I have never had to tune it up. I've never done anything. I've never even oiled it, to be honest. This is exactly the way it came. Self-centering, just as advertised, 2-inch capacity, just as advertised, and it works great. Let me just show you here. We just played with this one a little bit and found how badly off center it is. Not to worry though, because even with the Task, if this one were to be off center, you can adjust it. And you do that by loosening off these 2 Allen screws right here. And then from there, you can change this cam nut to change the position of this back plate in relation to how it operates with this front plate. And then by doing that, of course, you can set it and end up centering it. So a little finicky system there to be able to do that, but it is adjustable if you need to. The generic one here has the exact same adjustments, but you gotta see this. This just blew my mind. Here is your 2 Allen bolts to adjust this rear cam in order to center properly on your stock. Look at how it holds. Can you see that? It's got 2 little washers here. They look like number 10 washers. They're tightened down enough that they're bent and they're jammed onto this jam nut, we'll call it here. And that is your back plate adjustment for centering. That is the most Mickey Mouse thing I think I have ever seen in my life. So it's a good thing that the packaging didn't have this facing out the front when you're deciding which one to buy, because if you saw these two head to head, Honestly, which one would you choose in this situation? Guys, there is a huge difference here. So what do we do about it? I'm going to spend a little bit of time and see if I can get this to go centering, to center properly. I'm not going to film it because gosh knows how long it's going to take. If we look here, remember earlier I talked about the fit? You can even see the fit here, how loose these plates are on the generic and how tight they are on the task. It's night and day. But either way, let me play with this one. I'm not going to give up on it. Let me see if I can get this to center properly. The metal filings on the top of that is unreal, but I have it centered now. It took about an hour, just over an hour of fiddling with this to be able to get it centered. Here's the problem. Here's what I see as a problem. I pointed out earlier about the fit of this. Never mind the finish, never mind the rough edges, just the fit. And you may think, well, okay, those plates are a little loose on here. You can click them back and forth. What difference does that make? Look at the center plate because of it. Can you see that? Can you see the movement? Look at the movement in that center plate, guys. You can adjust this till the cows come home. And as long as there is that much movement there, you will never, ever get this jig to be reliable. It's as simple as that. All right, I wasn't ready to give up. I can't just leave it like that. So I've been able to get it so that it's drilling perfectly centered now. It took about another hour of playing around with the jig. I peeled the whole thing apart, completely stripped it down, and let me show you what I found. So guys, what I found inside the jig was that the spring nut that holds our center drilling bushings here in place, that was really buggered up in here, and because of that, it wasn't allowing it to tighten down onto the center shaft. So I was able to free that up, and if we look here now, that has corrected our play in our side pins. I think I'm at somewhere like 2.5 hours of playing with this jig, stripping it down and getting it to function. However, it is now a functioning jig. But not everybody would have the skill set or would want to. You shouldn't have to mess around with a new tool like this to get it working. Honestly though, don't be fooled. Looks are very deceiving. Price can be deceiving. Just because something is expensive does not make it good. Don't get me wrong. But in this case, I'm going to say you get what you pay for, and not all drilling jigs are created equally. And there you have it. Not all dowelling jigs are created equally. Guys, I spent an entire afternoon working on this one. Eventually, after hours and hours, even after the filming when I said I was at 2.5 hours, I still put more time into it. I went through and checked everything again. That spring nut at the top that seemed to be faulty and jammed and wasn't allowing things to align properly. I redid all of that and used some thread sealer to get in there and hold it in place so that it's not going to move again. Same thing with that Mickey Mouse setup on the back of the jig to get things all fixed up or aligned. I used thread locker on that as well to make sure that once I had all of my adjustments, they're going to stay there, because honestly, it isn't a bad functioning jig. Once I played around with it for as long as what I did, I got it working half decently. I mean, you can line it up with those lasered lines and you can drill a hole in the edge of your board dead center, right where that line is, every single time. So it works. But that doesn't correct the finish of the thing. It doesn't correct the fact that all of those bushings are so poorly milled that they have rough edges, that the drill bits are pulling steel out of it, like they're drilling it. So I've actually gone through all of those bushings with a 1/4 inch, a 3/8, and a 5/16 drill bit and reamed through them, just, run through in a clean pass to clean them out and to get the milling straightened out because they are such a mess. And if you're pulling those metal filings up out of that bushing, you're really damaging your brad point bits. That's not what they're designed to do. So I had to mill those. Guys, on a brand new tool, you shouldn't have to do stuff like that. Now, I understand new babies get sick. I get it. I get it. Sometimes you get a brand new tool and you bring it home and it doesn't work. Whether it be an electronic failure, whether it be something mechanical or whatever. But this thing from the get-go never even came close to the task. It never was even in the same ballpark. Looks the same, weighs the same, dimensions the same, everything is the same. It's a copycat tool. Its specifications are exactly the same. It is a copycat, but it is a very poorly done copycat. Works great now, but you've still got all those inconsistencies. So how about price point? We're talking about how, all these guys online say, oh, I got this one from Amazon. So cheap, much cheaper than yours and works just as good, okay? Price point, $47.69 for this guy, $105 for this guy. So it's roughly half the price. But what was my time worth to sit there and mess with that thing for the entire afternoon to get it functioning? Guys, I'm not one to just throw money away, but I do believe that you get what you pay for, and I would rather pay double the price for a tool that worked straight out of the box and has worked ever since flawlessly than to save half that money and waste half my day in the shop having to revamp a tool that should have worked in the first place, right from the get-go. There's a thing called quality control, and sometimes you got to pay for that. And when you don't, you end up with this. Guys, bottom line here, it's up to you, but you know how it is, and you know what it is that is acceptable to you. For me, a tool needs to work. And although I was able to get them functioning, or get the cheaper one functioning and functioning well, I think for my money, when I'm doing doweling, I think there's a problem there now where I've lost confidence in the other one. So I will be grabbing this one, the Task, when I have a doweling job to do. It's never let me down from day one. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. Something a little different. I just got tired of all the chit-chat and the blabbering about how, oh, I got this one much cheaper on Amazon. If that cheap jig is for you, then I hope you enjoy it. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. You click the bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the program. Something a little different today, guys. A little bit of fun, a little bit of frustration for me, I got to admit. But I got it fixed up in the end. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you're going to think about this when you're getting a tool next time. That sometimes cheaper is not always better, but also sometimes paying more doesn't necessarily mean you get quality. And I hope you're going to join me again next week, guys, when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.